It's been a few days, I think. I don't even know. Everything's like running together recently. Like every time like payroll comes around, like I had to do payroll on Tuesdays, or I'm sorry, Wednesday, and it's like Wednesday just keeps on coming up, like it's crazy. But anyway, so yeah, you can only get so far, and so I've been having this. I just had this conversation with my one sub, and he's super successful. And I'm going through the same thing, right? And basically, we can only get so far with the information that we have, right? And that's why we're on YouTube and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like it comes to a point where you have to find, a mentor or coach or something like that that is, several steps ahead of you, right? And otherwise, you're not going to make that much progress. Like, in the beginning when you're first starting out, like you'll start seeing these big, increases in productivity and everything else. It's kind of like working out, right? You work out, for the first like 6 months, you start seeing like this huge progression, the amount of weight you can lift and everything else. Obviously, like the results that you physically see, from your looks and whatnot doesn't change as drastically, but just the amount that you can lift, you might go from 50 pounds to like 100 pounds, something like that. Whereas like the next 6 months, you might go from 100 to 120, just making up random numbers, but that's how it is. And it's the same thing in the business where you're only going to get so far with the knowledge that you personally have. And like, then it's like taking the time to, bring in these coaches and the mentors and things like that and progressing that way. The other thing that you can do is, when you're first starting out, and whenever I say you, it's mostly talking to me as well, is that when we're first starting out, like we don't have a lot of money to spend. So the employees we're bringing them in for these lower dollar amounts, maybe for minimum wage, maybe it's 15, $20 an hour, whatever it happens to be. And these employees, like they typically don't, if they have any experience, they probably weren't the most reliable person in the world, because otherwise, like, why are they looking for a job? And like, if they were somewhere at a decent place and now they're working for you, well, if you don't have the systems in place and the structure that they need, well, they probably weren't the greatest employee if that was the case, right? So, what needs to happen is, coaches, mentors, whatever, but it's also looking at the employees. It's stop going and looking, for the people that you can train because you want to be the best there is and blah blah blah. You can have that mentality, but you're not really going to advance any further because the business is only going to get so far with your knowledge. So that's where it's bringing in someone that's got 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they just know what to do. More importantly, they know things that you don't. So, some key pieces of information that you're not even aware of, that you need to know this, this stuff. They already know this, right? And they're like 3 steps ahead. And so I'm going through the same thing. We are like, the wholesale end is really taking off, right? And I talked about it a few days ago, or just, I don't even know when, but like, it's because of these Facebook ads, right? And oftentimes it's not necessarily who the people that we're going after, because these are strictly for homeowners, right? But these people are still calling, right? And I'm making more progress doing it this way than physically reaching out to these people. Okay. So now what's happening is we went through and we were just doing like 2 things. We were doing 6 foot solid vinyl, and then we were doing aluminum. And then what happened is now it's like, we added in lattice and this closed spindle top, and then we started adding the colors and everything else. And so basically what happened is everything we were set up for with the 6 foot solid vinyl, it's no longer relevant for this other stuff. So what ended up happening is we had to keep on moving stuff around, and basically, one guy could probably make like 70, 80 panels a day. Well, it took 2 people like to make a full day, a day and a half, to make 47 panels because we just weren't efficient at it. So now my choices are basically, do I keep on struggling, and we're going to I have a few ideas what we're going to do, right? And do we just do that, and then as we add new products and styles, then we have to readjust everything again, right? And so it's going to take the time up front to think about the stuff and the planning and everything else, and then the execution of it, only for it to change like literally a month away because of how quickly we're growing, right? And or do I go after people that have already done this, right? So I already had a conversation with another a person that works for someone else, and they basically told me no. But now my choice is to just leave it at a no, or do I keep on going after him? Because I feel as though his no is because it's like the job security and stuff like that, which I understand. But at some point, like I'm gonna be able to get them to come over, hopefully, right? So those are my two options. Like, do I keep on struggling, or do I bring in someone that knows what they're doing? Because he could probably increase my productivity by like double without even thinking about it, right? And then he's got the tables, he knows everything that needs to be done. So that's something to think about. The other thing that I had the conversation with him about today is that he um so he came across the board like literally as I think at like 5 6 years old, like across the board. He since got legal, but he like was working 40 hours a week from the age of 9, like picking blueberries and all that kind of stuff, right? And so he's been doing this. Now he's 30 years old, and he has a super successful business. Like he has two crews for fencing that run through me. He has he has a division that does tree work. He does like plowing, like you name it, he pretty much does it, right? Landscaping crew, paving crew, deck crew, money on top of money on top of money. Like way more successful than me at this point. But what happens is he keeps on doing these tasks and these jobs that aren't as profitable. Oh, and he does pools as well, right? And I'm like, it pitched me an idea about making gates for me, right? The most he's going to make is like $1,000 a day, which for a lot of people, like that's a lot of money. But for him, like his tree crew, he's making 15 grand a week already. Like, and they just do it. I'm like, what kind of headaches? He's like, none. Like, it literally is like on autopilot, right? And so, one, we have to look at the opportunities that we're in. Like, this is what I keep on talking about with the wholesaling compared to what I was doing. One, it for me, it just the business model, it just works out better for me, right? And it's long term, it's more profitable. And same thing for him. He's got this tree company that makes him 15 grand a week, week after week after week, with just one crew. But yet, here he's playing with gates and shit, right? So, one, why do we keep on doing that? And I think it really comes down to your mindset and like how you grew up, right? So for him, I was telling him, like, look, like you used to have to struggle constantly for money. Working from the age of 9, he says his first paycheck at 9 years old, making $5 an hour, was 200 some dollars after taxes, right? So like it's crazy as a 9 year old. Nine. So anyway, going back to that, well, we need to start looking at why are we doing the things that we're doing, right? Here's a guy that's making 10, 15 grand a week, right? I think a few weeks ago, he made like 25 grand off of this, right? So we need to start looking at why are we constantly doing the crap that we're doing if it's not serving us anymore? And for him, I'm like, it's probably because you've struggled so long to make this kind of money that and finally, probably in the last 2 years, it's where everything's coming together. And I'm like, it's probably because you think if you stop working as hard as what you're doing, like you're gonna lose everything, right? And I said, but even if this happens, like just say tomorrow you wake up and literally have nothing to your name. I said, you and I both know within a week or two, you're gonna find out things to do to make like a grand a day. Like he's gonna do that because we already have the knowledge. You can take away everything that we have, but you can't take away our knowledge, right? And this kind of goes back to the whole like coach and mentor and all that kind of stuff, right? Whereas the things that you know now compared to what you knew when you first started, it's vastly different. Imagine if you could have talk to your now self when you first started. Imagine that. How much time would that take off of what you're currently doing? The amount of ignorance tax that we pay in the very beginning and continue to pay because we don't make the effort to go and find someone else that can do this stuff for us and teach us the way, it's costing us so much money. Now, typically, as people like me that would be online and YouTube, like talking about this stuff, about how you need a coach and everything else, I'm not selling you a coaching service. Like, I don't have the time for it at all. But I'm saying you got to find someone else, whatever industry it is. Most guys that are following me are because of the fence industry and whatnot. But you need to find someone in your space that is way ahead of you. It's not like if you're doing $1 million a year, finding someone that's doing $3 million a year. It's just not enough, right? It's finding that person that does $10 million a year. It's finding the person that has 2 and 3 locations. Like, what does that look like? Because not that you may, it's not that you want to go and have 2 and 3 locations, not necessarily, but it's the fact of they must have some crazy systems in place in order to expand without wanting to like literally drive off a bridge every day, right? So I'm pulling up to Walmart now. Um, but that's all about I got today. So talked to that a lot of progress, and I feel as though I think if we keep on beating our heads, and I've heard this saying before, but like if you really have to struggle to make a success out of yourself or the situation and everything else, it's probably not the right direction to go. Right. And it all comes down to different opportunities and things like that. Again, I talked about it with the wholesale. I guess this guy's going to cut me off. I talked about this before, but the holy grail of any business is going to be reoccurring revenue. Everyone's just pulling out in front of me, and you can't even go anywhere. Like, this is kind of annoying. So what can you add for reoccurring revenue for your business if you're going to stay in the current line that you're doing? You know, it's probably not going to wake up tomorrow and switch, but what can you do? Oh my God, these people, this is why I hate going to Walmart. Like, this is craziness. So it's like Frogger here, like whatever. So what can you do for reoccurring revenue? For the fence companies, like we talked about before, is like stuff like staining, right? You go in, or it could be like a yearly maintenance package where every year they pay you $200 or whatever. You go out, you double check all the gates and make sure all that's blah blah blah. And if you find anything that needs to be done, maybe there's some kind of discount package for that, right? The staining, obviously, that's another thing, because long term, over the 30-year time period, if you're trying to do this on the long term, it's way more profitable to do the $500 or $1,000 task instead of the 10,000 if you're going to end up doing it multiple times. So, but it could be anything within your business, and maybe as simple as searching like reoccurring, what are some reoccurring services that I can do as a plumber, as a landscaper, as a carpenter, as a whatever it may be. I haven't personally looked into this, but again, as a fencing, staining, yearly maintenance package, something like that. But it gets you away from having to find customers over and over again, to finding that customer once and getting them to pay you over and over again. Like, it's a mindset shift, right? That's where the biggest companies in the world are making the money. That's why, the Netflix of the world. So that's why none of the softwares, like, think of a software that you can buy out right now, compared to like, Microsoft Office and stuff like that. None, I think even that's probably on a every year basis. But no one sells you anything outright anymore because there's so much money in the recurring revenue. So we just have to look at what the most successful businesses are doing and try to do like duplicate that kind of thing within our own business. So it's definitely possible, but it's, again, expanding your mindset and talking to the coaches and the mentors and stuff like that are literally light years ahead of you, or have been doing this for 20-30 years. Like, they've made all your mistakes 14 times already. Like, learn from that so we don't have to deal with that ignorance. That's tax. So anyway, have an awesome night, and